Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the second video in the series I'm doing here where I go over all the different main champion decks in Riftbound, and we go over the deck, what it's trying to accomplish, the mulligan, how to play it, and overall just my experience playing this deck and what you can expect come October when the cards drop. We've done one other one of these. We did an aggro Victor deck, so if you haven't seen that, I'll link it in the description somewhere. But yeah, if you have any other decks you want to see, please let me know in the comments. I believe we're going to be doing Master Yi next. We're just going through with sort of the most popular meta decks right now. But yeah, without further ado, let's hop into this. So, just a quick overview. We're going to do a high-level overview, look at the Legend and Champ, general strategy, deck list. We'll highlight all the cards in the deck, when they should be used. We'll look at the sideboard and some alternatives that you can mix in there. Some of the deck matchups this deck has, the mulligan, and my experience playing it in the tournament so far. So, it's a Fury Mind or red-blue deck. Predominantly, it's going to be blue units and red spells. Red has probably the most powerful removal in the game. Unlike the Victor deck, the Fury removal is more on damage based. It's not just remove a minion, but they're very low mana, they're very high damage, and takes care of almost all the cards in the game. And then the blue units, along with the red Darius unit, are how we're going to be able to get rid of those really strong, really big units that decks like Master Yi and Volibear are able to put out there. So, Kai'Sa Legend. She's a Mind Fury type, as we've mentioned. Her ability is at reaction speed, and you tap her to add a rune of either red or blue type that you can use for the cost. So you can only use it to play spells. So, for example, if you have Hextech Ray, for example, that is a 1 cost, 1 Fury power spell. You would still tap the 1 rune, and then you would tap Kai'Sa, and you would not have to recycle the 1 red rune to the bottom of the deck. Same with like if there's a Kothian Rain where it's a 7 cost, 3 recycle, you'd only have to recycle 2, and then you could tap Kai'Sa. So that's pretty much what that means. It's just a way to discount your spells, keep your rune pool up, and it's pretty straightforward champ. Just don't forget about it. I guess that's the only thing with there. So this is our chosen champion for this deck. We are using the Kai'Sa Survivor card. She has the ability to accelerate her for 1 extra Fury rune, and she is a 4 cost, 4 might card that when she conquers, you draw 1 card. This is a really decent, sometimes turn 2 play if you're going second and the opponent's tapped out. You can take a point, draw a card, and potentially hold, depending on the matchup. It's also really good to close out the games with a late game swing. You'll see, unlike the Victor deck, we run 3 copies of this card. The Accelerate units are really important to securing points in this deck since we're primarily a removal deck. So one of the decisions we'll talk about later is we need to know how and when to use this card effectively, and we don't really want to be playing this without the Accelerate cost. I would say in like 90% of the time. So, general strategy for this. This is a pretty classic control deck if you've played Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. It's really similar to some of the blue-red counterburn decks in Magic the Gathering. The Fury runes provide some really, really strong removal cards, and then the Mind rune type, gives us some very powerful units, as well as just really good early game units like Yordle and Sentry. And then later in the game, we can close out with people like Thousand-Tailed Watcher and Riptide Rex. We do, with this deck, we try to surprise our opponent by grabbing opponents with our accelerated cards and by comboing into them so that we can all of a sudden swing with 7 might cards or bring Kai'Sa onto the battlefield 4 might. We want to get it in quick succession, and the idea is we kind of clear their battlefield of our removal using our Kai'Sa Legend to discount our spells, and then we still have enough mana left over to bring in our accelerated units, take the battlefields, and then they have nothing to contest us. So we're able to hold battlefields, and then we have some synergy with our Kai'Sa and our battlefields that can get us more card draw, more tapped runes, etc. So, this is the deck we're looking at here. That's annoying. The pictures are off a little bit, but we got the Legend, Kai'Sa, Daughter of the Void, the Champion. There's three three of the champion cards in this deck. We're rocking 3 Ravenbloom Student, 3 Watchful Sentry, 2 Lecturing Yordle, 3 Sprite Mothers, 3 Darius Trifarians, 3 Riptide Rex, and 3 Thousand Tailed Watchers. And then our battlefields, we're going to be rocking Voidgate, Reckoner's Arena, Targon's Peak. Voidgate, very straightforward. Spells and abilities do 1 extra damage on this. That combos really, really well with all of our removal spells. Reckoner's Arena, it is if you hold that battlefield, your conquer effects are activated. So in an ideal world, what we do is we will accelerate, punch with Kaisa, take the battlefield, draw a card, gain our point. The opponent is not able to respond the next turn. We hold, gain another point, gain another card draw. Really powerful combo there. And then lastly, Targon's Peak. This one I'm open to swapping out. This Targon's Peak works by at the end of your turn when you conquer this battlefield, you can ready 2 runes. So basically untap 2 runes. Pretty decent. As far as just you take it and then you give yourself the option to have some removal again. I didn't find that much value in the tournament with Targon's Peak. Targon's Peak is definitely always the 3rd battlefield I play. I pretty much always lead with Voidgate and then into Reckoner's Arena. So I could maybe swap out Targon's Peak for some of the other stuff, but to be honest, I haven't theory crafted that much yet. So but you can't go wrong with it. It's fine. For spells, we've got 3 Stupefy, 2 Cleave, 3 Hextech Ray, 2 Smokescreen, 3 Void Seeker, 3 Falling Star, 1 Akathian Rain, and for these runes, it's 7 Fury, 5 Mind. And then for the sideboard, we have 2 Retreat, 2 Shakedown, 2 Akathian Rain, and then 2 Vi Destructive. Sorry about the pictures messing up with that. Not sure what happened there. All right, going over the early game units. The Mind Runes give us access to some of the strongest early game units in the entire game. Watchful Sentry, got running 3 of these guys, very standard, even in the last Victor deck. Very simple. It's a 2 cost, 1 might. You're really just hoping to sneak 1 point out of this guy, right? As we go first, hopefully draw him in the first hand, tap 2, put him out there. Maybe the opponent doesn't want to use a removal. Maybe the opponent just doesn't have the mana or a bad draw. Get him out there, score a point, and then when he dies, we draw a card. Who cares? We can throw this guy away, you know. Ravenbloom Student, obviously, when you play a spell, you get +1 might this turn. Very nice to sort of combo against some of those early, especially in the Fury. Some of these decks will play, like the Fury decks, like Darius, will play some of these like 3 might units, 4 might units that they're able to discount by throwing away cards. Jinx will play a lot of these guys. Ravenbloom, sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. Is very effective by, if the batelfield's split, we can play like a Hextech Ray to get rid of the 1 unit on the 1 battlefield, and then swing with 3, which can either clear or tie. She's really strong with Stupefy as well. You can Stupefy a 3 might unit, bring it down to 2, buff yourself to 3. Easy swing. Just kind of a no-brainer to put in this deck, I would say. Lecturing Yordle, really good if you're going second. Just a nice, good 3-drop that you draw 1. It also has Tank, which I didn't find that much value with it. But again, running 2 of these guys, just a solid 3-drop, gets us some card draw, gets us to the cards that we really want to be drawing. Mid-game units. We've already talked about Kaisa, so I won't harp too much on her, but these are the units we're going to be collecting points, I would say like 3 to 6 from, ideally. You know, in a dream hand, which we'll talk about later, after we go first, we're able to play Sprite Mother turn 2. And the way Sprite Mother works, for those of you that don't know, is she's a 4-cost 3 might card. Play it in your base, you tap it to spawn, or it comes into your base tapped, and then it spawns a 3/3 Sprite token that's active. So then you can move the Sprite token to either the unoccupied battlefield, secure your point, or to contest the other battlefield and fight. Very strong, very tempo-y card. I actually won a game in my tournament because I drew back-to-back. I had opening hand, and then I back-to-back drew the Sprite Mothers and was able to get like 3, 4, 5 points like immediately off them, and then still have the bodies in the base later. The Sprite tokens do die at the beginning of your turn before you score points, so you'll never get holding points with the Sprites, but still, very, very easy, cheap way to get points in the mid game. Almost always we're going to be keeping this card in our hand, in the opening hand, if we draw it. All right, so these are the big dogs. This is how we are going to be closing out games. I guess from left to right. So Darius is one of our finishers. You could even argue that we would want to keep this guy in our opening hand depending on the matchup. That's how strong he is. The way Darius works is he is a 5-cost 1 recycle, 5-cost 1 power fury creature that is a 5 might at first, but when you play the second card in a turn, he gets +2 might and he gets readied. So, and he also can count as the second card in the turn, if that makes sense. So typically what the play is going to be, let's say they've got a 4 might unit on base, something like that. Oftentimes what the play is going to be, or maybe they've split the battlefields, it's going to be like some sort of removal, Hextech Ray, Void Missile, Falling Star, to get rid of one of their units, and then we play Darius as the second card, or reverse the order, it doesn't matter, able to come in, swing for 7 might, and take that battlefield. And then, even after the turn ends, him being at 5 might, they are pretty much going to have some sort of direct removal that's going to have to be an answer for him. So, very, very strong card. He combos incredibly well with cards like Stupefy and Cleave. Cleave gives him +3, gives an attacking card +3 might. So then, you can see that he becomes a 10 might unit. Oops. And we're able to swing and take out some of these large minions that are units that like people like Master Yi, Set, Lee Sen are putting out. So very strong. Riptide Rex, this guy is overpowered. Like, this is insane. 6 cost, 2 recycle, or 2 power, deals 6 damage to an enemy unit on the battlefield. So, oftentimes, what I see happening is I use, we've, in an ideal world, we've got the Sprite Mother out there. Maybe we had our Kaisa and we took a point. The opponent spends their entire turn getting a huge guy out onto the battlefield, attacks the battlefield, conquers it. They're feeling good, but they've tapped out, and then we just Riptide Rex immediately, 6 damage, 7 if Void Gate's on the field, and then we almost will always have some sort of other removal in our hand, like a Hextech Gate or a Void Missile. And then all of a sudden we got a big old 6 might unit in base. They've just used removal or their big unit to go after our sort of medium-sized units, and now they're stuck staring down this guy. So really powerful card, really broken. The only downside is he is a 2 recycle for Mind, and we can't use Kaisa because because her ability only works for spells. But still, 3 copies of this guy. Going forward, I see every deck that utilizes Mind runes probably using this card, except for maybe like a super aggro Victor deck. I think in the future we'll do another Victor deck overview that's more mid-rangey, and this guy I can guarantee you is going to be in there. And then lastly, Thousand-Tailed Watcher. So, 7 cost, 1 power card, 7 might, but he has the option to accelerate him. So, 8 might, 2 power. And when you play him, give enemy units -3 this turn. -3 might. So, this guy's crazy. He basically turns your mid-tier units. He's such an easy 2-point swing, right? But then he's also, I'd say situations are you close out the game and you can score your final 2 points with him. Maybe you got a Sprite Mother on the field or a Lecturing Yordle. Pop it in, gets rid of their 4 or 5 unit cards, able to clear, and then he's able to solo the other battlefield. Or you can use him as a solo option if you don't have like Riptide Rex or the removal in your hand to, minus down one of these big volley bears, big sets, get in there, take the battlefield, finish it off. So these are definitely our late game closers here. All right, so onto the removal that we've been referencing the whole time. These are 3 of the most powerful cards in the entire deck, some of the most powerful removal in the game. Hextech Ray, we're always looking for this in our opening hand. 1 cost, 1 recycle, but you're pretty much just going to use Kaisa on this every time. So it's really just 1 cost, deal 3 to remove your opponent's tempo in the early game. Incredibly strong. They do have to be on a battlefield, but as soon as they try to take that first battlefield, just say, actually, no. And then they're tilted the rest of the game, too, when you do that. So that. Falling Star. Okay, so Falling Star is how we control the tempo of this game. You will win so many games off of, having your Yordle, your Sprite Mother, your Kaisa, your Darius down, taking the battlefield. Then the opponent's already behind because you've taken the battlefield. So then they spend their entire turn playing like two 4 might cards or a 4 might card, Coal of the Week, or something like that. The multiple units, who knows? And then we just come in Falling Star, and we can either remove one of their large units with up to 6 damage because we can choose the same unit, or we clear the units in their base 1, 2. They're dead, and then they need 2 turns to be able to contest us at the battlefield again. Like, now, see you later. Like especially against like Ari, we had Ari decks. Oh my gosh, you keep this card in that matchup, they will be cooked. This card's ridiculously broken, and if I had to take a guess, I'm gonna guess when the next set gets released. What I think is gonna happen is they're gonna have to release some cards that will buff the mites of your units in base to counteract this card, because this card is absolutely broken. Along with like Riptide Rex, probably not. Honestly, I think this is probably the best card in the deck. Um, so yeah, very very strong. You're probably keeping this in your opening hand unless you're maybe playing like Victor or another token deck. Um, Void Seeker, 3 damage or 3 cost, 1 power. It's an action card, so you can play this during showdowns, and it's 4 damage to a unit of battlefield. Draw a card. Good, solid removal and card draw. Can't complain. And then the one thing I forgot to mention, Falling Star is a spell, so you can only play that during your turn. Whereas Hextech Ray and Void Seekers you can play during showdowns on the opponent's turn. So just keep that in mind. The combo cards. So these are really, really strong with Darius, especially, but also just good in general. So first we have Stupefy. Give a unit -1 might this turn. Draw a card. This is really, really strong with comboing into Darius as well as with Ravenbloom Student. Very cheap, very good option. Sometimes, and we looked at the sideboard earlier, I will replace one of these, or like one of Cleave, one of Stupefy, or even a Kothian Rain with Retreat. So if you're in like another control matchup, or playing against like yellow where they have access to Call of the Week or Hidden Blade, I probably will sideboard in Retreat instead of this card. But I would say if you're playing a deck that you're pretty confident going to be sending out units on turns 1, 2, and 3, this is a pretty decent card to get, hopefully with Ravenbloom Student. Yeah. Cleave, this is our Darius combo. This turns Darius into a 10 might unit for 1 cost, no recycle. Very good. This is also decent to get in your opening hands. We can all of a sudden make cards like Watchful Sentry or Ravenbloom Student really, really powerful, really, really fast. Good for getting early tempo, swinging the battlefields in your favor. Smokescreen, another ridiculously good card. Great with combo. It's got reaction speed as well, so give a unit -4 might this turn. This is also really, really good in combination with the removal, because you get like a big old 6 might unit, or like Snapvine or something like that. Smokescreen, Hextech Ray, he's gone for 3 mana and 1 recycle after Kaisa. So only running 2 of these in the deck, you could make the argument that we would want to add 1 more in our sideboard, and I would not call you wrong for that. I just think a lot of times we're using our removal more than our actual units for doing this, and I just think some of the other cards are a little bit better than Smokescreen. So the sideboard cards. So as we mentioned, Retreat. I've been tossing around the idea of throwing Retreat in my main deck, to be honest, just because I've been seeing a lot of other players playing Kaisa or playing Master Yi or Victor, where they have the yellow, or Leona even, where they have some of the strong removal cards. This is really, really good if you can bait out some heavy removal, 1 cost, bring it right back to your hand. And then if you're bringing a card like Darius or Kaisa right back to your hand, then you're getting even more card draw value or accelerate value with that. So I have 2 in my sideboard. You could put it in your main board. The only thing about this card is if it's not useful in the matchup, then this is a useless card. And that can sometimes lead to game losses just on its own. Shakedown. This is an interesting card. When I was originally playing Kaisa and I got the deck list off of Piltover Archive, the deck list was running 3 of these, I think. And I think this card on paper is not is very good in a control matchup, but you're pretty much it's pretty much always two power one to draw two cards. Almost never are they going to let you deal 6 damage. And I think that's what ended up prompting me to go with a different version of this deck where this moved to the sideboard. I do think I sideboarded this in once against a Master Yi matchup just to sort of give him another option, as well as in the Ari matchups to bait out the what is it, wind wall? I forget what the, or counter spell, or I forget I think it's wind wall and counter spell, where it's like counter the low cost spells so they could do this. It has its moments, but most of the time this is just going to be card draw, and in the end I decided there were better cards to put in the deck. Buy Destructive, this is the card you sideboard in anytime you're playing an aggressive deck. So Victor token, Darius token, even Ari, I could maybe see an argument to an extent. This is a really good game to sideboard in, though. Like, just see how your opponent plays, see what they're trying to do. I think when the decks first release and people don't super, like, people not like us who are been playing for months on Tabletop Simulator, are just going to kind of be throwing dudes out there, especially in the early game. I think Vi will be very strong to have in your deck just as a answer to stopping some of these cheap points that units like Watchful Sentry, Soaring Scout, cards like that can get. Akathian Rain. So there's one of these cards in my main deck, and there's two in the sideboard. If I'm being honest, as cool as Akathian Rain sounds, do this 6 times, deal 2 damage to a unit. It's not a really good card unless you're in a token matchup. Now, having said that, in the token matchups like Darius and Victor, this card just wins you the game. It's 7 mana, win the game. But in the situations where you're not doing that, it's sometimes hard to get this value out of this card, especially when it's 7 recycle 3. Now, again, I've played a control game against who was it? I think it was like a Lee Sin, where this card got me a lot of value. I was able to clear both his battlefields out, and then I've also played this in the counter Kaisa matchup where I lost the game because I committed an entire turn to a Kothian Raining, and then he just retreated his thousand-tailed Watcher, and then was able to swing again with it. So take it as you will. I could even be down with removing a Kothian Rain from the main deck and putting it into the sideboard, but I just think this deck really struggles against token decks and really, really aggressive decks because they can demand too much value of removal on really shitty units. That this card is a must, and if you are playing against one of these token decks, sideboard this in and then keep it in your opening hand, and win the game. So. Some other potential cards that you can swap in, and I think have some potential here. Vayne, Assault 3, when she's an attacker, she's basically 4 power 1 for a 5 attack unit. And if the opponent controls the battlefield, you could pay 1 extra she enters ready, and then you can pay 1 extra to return her to the hand, and then you just have her as another answer. So I could see this. This would probably be a substitute if you didn't want to play Vi. I think you would probably put Vayne in here. And I just haven't really messed around with it that much, but I think that could be very powerful. Victor Innovator, I just think this is kind of like a cool, interesting card. If you're in like a matchup where they don't have like removal for cards in your base, you could really just like leave this dude chilling in your base the entire time, and then every time the opponent tries to take a battlefield, you use your removal, stop them from taking the battlefield, generate a token, and now you can just throw in your token to go try to take those points and bait out their removal the next turn. So I actually think in like a harder control matchup, this guy could be really powerful. I have not found a way to work him in yet, but once I am past the point where I'm playing all the main meta decks and I'm starting to experiment before the card releases, I definitely want to get this guy in and start 3D crafting a deck around him because I think he could be really strong in this in a control matchup especially. Dr. Mundo, this is the mirror matchup winner right here. So you would be, if you're going to a tournament and you expect there to be a lot of Kaisas, this guy's your man right here. He is 8 cost, 2 recycle, 6 might, but his might is increased by the number of cards in your trash. and then it goes -3 each time after that because you recycle 3 cards. But still, like that's kind of an insane because like think about it. We went over all the removal that red has, and it is really good, really strong removal. You combine it with Smokescreen and Hextech Ray, Void Missile, Falling Star. They would have to commit minimum 2 cards to get rid of this guy, probably 3 if we're being honest. And so very, very strong. For that case, I could see the reason I could see 2 of these guys being in your sideboard. And I do think when it comes time, meta's defined, we're playing with the actual cards, the tournaments are getting serious. I think there's a strong chance Dr. Mundo would be in the sideboard, if not the main deck um, of this as time goes on. Noxus Hopeful, again, decent combo card. We have a lot of cards in this deck like Stupefy, Cleave, even some of our cheap minions that would allow this to basically be a 2-cost 4 might card. Um, that's insane value. So if you're going like a little more tempo-y, a little more unit heavy deck, almost like aggro with burn, I could see that working out pretty well. I don't think it quite has a place in the blue-red counter burn, or sorry, not counter burn, but this blue-red Kaisa control deck. But it could potentially be enough value just to justify a spot in here instead of maybe some of your guys like Lecturing Yordle or even Watchful Sentry if you feel you have enough card draw. Other potential swaps. Singularity. If you're, you know, this one should be potentially in the sideboard, and if you're expecting a lot of Master Yi, a lot of Lee Sin, a lot of Volibear, this could be a very good card. Where red, obviously, this deck is very, very good at removing medium units. When they get those big, huge units, like 2 of them on each battlefield, that's when we're kind of screwed. So this card would be an answer to some of that. I think it's a little too expensive to justify it right now when you have just the combos of like Smokescreen and Hextech Gate or Hextech Ray that accomplish the same thing. Um, but depending on the meta, I think this card could be strong, depending on what decks other people are playing. Draven, I think he's just an interesting card. Again, this is just like subbing out, substituting some of our really, really strong cards. So he would be a great late game finisher for 5 cost, one recycle. You could have potentially like a 7 might unit, 8 might. So interesting. I could see this guy being worked. He's probably one of the lesser ones that I would say, just because I think Riptide Rex is so much stronger than him. But I think there's a world where, again, you're playing against some like a lot of control decks. He could be a decent sideboard at. Raging Firebrand. When you play me, the next spell you play this turn costs 5 less. This is a case where if you're running cards like Singularity, or some of these other like higher removal spells, it's obviously just got a lot of natural synergy there. So that's what I would say to that. And then lastly, Kaisa Evolutionary. She has ganking. She's a 6-cost, 1 recycle, 6 might unit that when she conquers, you can play a spell from your trash with energy cost less than your points without paying its energy cost, then recycle it. So basically, you can just use more removal that was already in your trash, and then you're just paying the recycle cost, which is essentially just going to be your Tysa, your legend tap. So could be really strong. I think it just doesn't quite make the cut because the other Kaisa champion, the Survivor, is so good and combos so well with the battlefields. But again, I think this has a chance to be in another sort of variation of this deck in the future. I think it could be kind of fun. All right, so we've been talking about all these deck matchups. So admittedly, I'd say I've played probably around 60 to 75 games of this deck at this point. And I haven't even run into every deck yet. It seems like there's, about 6 to 8 decks that people are consistently playing. And this is what I have found. I've found that against Leona's a bit of a weaker deck. We all kind of know this, but there seems to be a lot of Leona players out there. Like every tournament I've played in so far, I've played at least one Leona, and it's always insanely close, but she's just not quite strong enough to ever close out the game. Obviously, Leona's whole idea is she wants to stun your units, and then she wants to move your stunned units to her on the battlefield so that they do 0 damage, and then she can kill them with her units. Luckily for us, a lot of times we're kind of able to get her to do that against like dumb and useless units like the Sprite Mother, the Raven Bloom student, stuff like that. And then after they waste all that, we just come in with a Riptide Rex or a Cleave Darius, and we absolutely smack them on the next turn with the Accelerate cost. So just know that in that Leona matchup, any unit you leave on the battlefield holding is probably going to die. You're not going to get a lot of hold points in that matchup, but I don't think I've ever lost to Leona with this deck. So pretty favorable matchup. Lee Sin, I think Lee Sin is just kind of a worse Master Yi. He does a lot of buffs, gets a lot of cards out there, but again, due to our really strong removal and our really strong mid game cards, a lot of times we can get to 4 or 5 points before they're really set up to do anything, and then we come in with our closers like Riptide Rex, Thousand Tailed Watcher to come in, retake control of the battlefields once they finally get their guys out there, and then it's too late for them to recover. Jinx, I mean, I won my matchups against Jinx. I think I lost one and won two of them. And Jinx is just going to Jinx, right? So there are going to be games against Jinx where she gets just her God combo and she's just going to keep super mega death rocketing you. She's going to keep drawing cards. She's going to keep putting out like the three might red unit. She's going to put out the Phoenix. Like, and there's going to be some games where you just sit there and say like, all right, like I'm cooked, right? And if Jinx lost those games, then there would be no point playing that champion. But if Jinx does not draw her like ideal hands or draw really, really well and top deck really, really well, you have just better units and better removal compared to her deck, and you're probably going to win that game. You can also you'll sideboard retreat in that matchup, and you're able to save yourself from super mega death rocket, make her throw more cards away, make her recycle more cards to get that back, and you can just kind of outvalue her and win it, especially if you get your early game units. Ari, pretty. I think I have a 100% win rate against Ari with this deck. Very strong matchup. She's got very little removal. The idea that she wants to do is she wants to charm your units over into her people, try to counter your spells, and then use stuff like Zonia's Hourglass to keep her units on the field. But the good news for us is like, what's the whole point of this deck? We spam removal, and then we come in with accelerated units, and we retake the battlefields. So I just think it's an unlucky matchup for Ari. You're probably winning that matchup like 70, 80% of the time if you play smart and you mulligan all right, don't get screwed. Uh, let's see. Master Yi. This one I would say is slightly favorable. Master Yi is probably the other really strong deck in the meta right now. It seems like people are playing Kaisa Master Yi the most. So, I would say it's slightly favorable because in reality, cards like our Void Missiles, our Hextech Gate are going to be great for controlling their early to mid game. We can sneak a few points in, and then if the deck performs as we expect, when they finally use all their resources there to retake the battlefields, we come in with cards like Thousand Tailed Watcher, Riptide Rex, and Darius Accelerated, come in with like 10 might swinging at them, and they're unable to do that. And then once you have control of the battlefield, you use your removal and use your falling stars to stop them from even building up their base units again, and then you win the game off of that. Unfavorable matchups. Victor, if they draw well and they just keep tokening you early, unless you draw your early game units, you're probably cooked. I'll be honest. Like nothing feels worse in this game than Hextech gating a 1/1 Victor token, because if you don't, it's going to score 3 points. So if the Victor draws really well and it's aggressive, hope you draw a Kothian Rain and then never lose control of those battlefields again. But it's a tough matchup, I'll be honest. Set is your other incredibly tough matchup, and the reason being is because Set's the champion. You can tap him to spend a buff, and then he basically, instead of the units dying, goes right back to base. So you're never going to get holding points, and if you spend a lot of removal to kill like his 7 might unit, he's just going to spend its buff, bring it back to base, and then you're going to have to do it all over again. So I would say Set's a pretty tough matchup. But the good news is I would say Set is way less popular now than he was like a month ago. Like it seemed like a month ago Set was all over the place, and now I barely see those decks anymore. So not seeing that matchup as much. And then lastly, Volibear. Maybe. I don't know. I think I've played like one Volibear, and I don't think the player was very good, and he still almost won just because he gets out so many ridiculously large units, and then he uses like the rage spell that he can discount with his excessively large units to remove my medium and large sized units. He's got access to like Primal Fury, which will give his units +7 might. So if you spend like two spells for removal, he just does that and nullifies that. So I could see that being a tough matchup. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I have enough games under my belt against Volibear to give you a full answer. But yeah, and then I didn't any of the other decks like not listed on here are probably just neutral skill matchups, or I just haven't had enough experience playing against them. No one's playing Garen, no one's really playing Annie, no one's really playing Lux, so it's like I'm not really gonna spend the time to go over that. But these are the main ones you're gonna be seeing anyway. So, moving on to the general mulligan strategy for this deck. We always want to go first if we have the option. That's pretty much the same with every deck in Riftbound except for maybe Volibear. I think Volibear does not mind going second. I actually don't know if they prefer first or second, but ideally we want at least one, and I probably two removal spells early on. Like Hextech Gate and Void Missile are great in the opening hands. I'll almost never toss those. And then we want 1 to 2 of our early game units. Probably ideally like a Watchful Sentry and a Raven Bloom. Or one of those two, and then we would love to have our Sprite Mother in there as well. Sprite Mother is an incredibly strong turn 2 play. That we can establish battlefields in our units in our base and take a point on the battlefield or contest or get rid of their unit. So always looking for that. Falling Star is really, really good against Master Yi, Lee Sin, Volibear, Darius Token. Honestly, it's good against almost every deck that's going to be playing. The only one I wouldn't keep it against is like maybe Kaisa mirror matchup, something like that. But any deck that's going to be reliably putting out units that are like 2 to 4 might, really, really strong, would keep that. Depending on the matchup, you might want to keep Darius. If I'm playing against a Kaisa mirror match, Darius is probably one of the strongest cards in that matchup, and I definitely want to keep him in that. But it's really all about the matchup and what you're seeing, and just your experience with the deck. Typically, you're not going to keep Darius, but there are situations where you will. If you're going against the token deck, I'd say it's worth keeping a Kothian Rain, just because that is how you win the game. So you're just basically trying to survive till turn 7 when you can play Kothian Rain, wipe their stuff, and then hope you can maintain control of the battlefields after that. And then obviously, as the advice in all of these is if you do bring in a sideboard card, you should be keeping it in your hand. And if you don't feel like you want to keep your sideboard card, that's probably an indication of you probably shouldn't have sideboarded it in. So in general, yeah, keep the sideboard cards if you brought it in. Just like an example, I think this would be like my dream opening hand in most matchups, or just in matchups where I didn't know it that well. You've got 2 early removal, you've got the Ravenbloom student to play turn 1, and then you can follow it up with the Sprite Mother on turn 2 to co-establish yourself on the battlefield. So, just some closing thoughts. If you've made it this far, thanks for sticking along. If you guys could throw me a like, these videos do take a long time to make, but I do really enjoy making them, so I'll make them no matter what. But hopefully this will help out at least some of you. My thoughts on this deck is that it's very strong, and it's definitely the highest play rate deck I've seen in the current meta. I know it's before the release, so saying meta sounds bad, but it's a very fun deck, and it's very strong. It gives you a chance in every single game to win it, and it makes you think a lot. So I think people are naturally drawn to this deck if you've played Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone, because it's your standard control deck. So it has a nice rhythm and feel to it. The most impactful decisions you're going to have to make are where and when to use your removal, if they have an answer to your removal, and what will happen if they have the answers to the removal. Alongside that, it's going to be knowing when to pull out your Accelerate cards, when to pull out your Darius, your Kaisa, if they're going to have the resources to kill your Darius and Kaisa before you can get the holding points for the next turn. And then just knowing your matchups and knowing when's the right time to make that swing, when's the right time to hold off, when's what card is worth using the removal on, how they can buff their cards out of the fight to not die to your units. You guys know what I mean. So yeah, just knowing not how not to overextend yourself. And then another thing is you do need to keep in mind like what runes you're tapping and what runes you are recycling. It doesn't screw you over that often. Most of the time you're gonna be fine, but you know you do have 5 blue or versus 7 red, so sometimes you should be wary of what cards you are recycling. Just keep that in mind. I played this in 2 tournaments. The first day I went 2-2, and I really could have gone. I probably should have gone 3-1. I barely lost one game where he top decked, and it was very, very close. And then the second day I went 3-1, and I lost my one match to the Kaisa mirror matchup. So you know, we can if you do enough coping, you actually could count that as like a 4-0 because a Kaisa won that match. Um, the mirror matchup is very tricky, and I would say what I've learned from that is he who plays Darius first will probably lose because he's going to play Darius, swing, take the battlefield, and then I'll give you 3 guesses to what the opponent's going to do next turn. He's going to go with his own Darius, which beats your Darius because now he has the +2 might, and he's readied immediately, and he's going to kill you. So, and then you're going to have to be forced to remove his Darius from the battlefield instead of vice versa. So keep that in mind. And then I do think when the meta is more established and we have more experience playing all these decks, the sideboard is what's going to be the difference between the 4-4 Kaisas and the 7-1 Kaisas, the 8-0 Kaisas. I think getting a good read on the meta is going to be very, very critical for knowing if you should be sideboarding the retreats versus the Victors versus the Dr. Mundos, like what decks are going to be showing up. So I think that's really key, and I think that's very exciting going forward with what we got. But that's all I got. Hopefully you guys found this useful. I would say expect a Master Yi video in about 2 weeks. I usually like to play these decks for about 2 weeks so I can get, 50, 75 games in on them. But any other suggestions you guys have, leave it in the comments. I do stream these tournaments occasionally. I'll link my Twitch in the description. You guys can see me play some of these games live. But hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.